The day I awakened, I personally beat the love-struck fairy into a white snake, throwing her and the scholar into the mortal realm. I thought it was a lesson to others, but the god of war tore the barrier for a demoness, and the emperor and empress forced me to give up half of my cultivation to a sinful immortal. The gods collectively resigned, threatening, "Your Majesty doesn't understand love at all." I laughed, approved all the resignations, and opened the ascension channel to allow mortals to replace the gods. It wasn't until the demons, using the traitorous gods, stormed the hall of celestial glory that I realized all of this was a plot arranged by a higher dimensional author to praise so-called great love. Very well, then I will personally meet this creator who uses the suffering of all beings to write aesthetics. I am the heavenly emperor, the most supreme existence in this world. But I've noticed recently that someone or something is challenging my patience. For example, right now, a mortal dares to question me in my presence. A fairy is currently standing before me, questioning me. Even if you are the heavenly emperor, do you understand love? I look at the fairy who is loudly questioning me, and the scholar hiding behind her looking aggrieved, with little emotion in my eyes. The fairy is a female official in my palace, who privately descended to the mortal realm some time ago. She's been like this ever since she returned. And that scholar is just an ordinary scholar in the mortal realm. Yet he dares to covet a fairy. At this moment, that scholar is hiding behind the fairy with an aggrieved expression, with a hint of provocation in his eyes. I don't know who gave him the courage. Maybe the fairy told him something beforehand, like I wouldn't care about anyone or anything. Indeed, for a long time, I didn't know why, but I didn't care about those who violated the heavenly rules at all. But now it's different. I've awakened, and naturally I won't be lenient towards those who violate the heavenly rules. I looked at the two people in the hall of celestial glory and roared, "Presumptuous!" In an instant, the entire god realm was shrouded in darkness. Thunder rumbled in the sky, full of intimidation. The scholar was instantly so frightened that he fell to the ground. The fairy also looked at me with a frightened expression at this time, but when she saw the scholar fall to the ground, she still suppressed the fear in her heart and walked to the scholar's side. "Li Lang, are you all right?" The scholar shook his head, looking weak. "Yao, I'm fine, I'm sorry. I caused you to anger the heavenly emperor." The fairy shook her head infatuatedly. "No, Lang, it's not your fault. It's the fault of the heavens. Is it true that this world can't tolerate people who truly love each other like us?" I sat high on the throne, looking at the pair holding hands tightly, as if facing all the storms together. My interest was far greater than my anger. How long has it been? How long has it been since I've seen such a brazen performance? I leaned forward slightly. My pressure lessened slightly, but it added a bit of playfulness, and my voice echoed in the suddenly quiet hall of celestial glory. "Oh, so is your love really so great that it can surpass heavenly rules and disregard morality?" Seeing that there seemed to be a turning point, hope ignited in the fairy's eyes. She exchanged a look with the scholar, and the two of them recited in unison the oath that had been circulating in the mortal realm for a long time. "When mountains have no edges, when the heavens and earth unite, then dare I part from you." The voices were loud and sincere, echoing in the hall. I chuckled, breaking the tragic atmosphere they had created for themselves. In fact, immortals are not necessarily required to be single. There are many immortal couples in the god realm. We only prohibit cross-species relationships between gods and demons, and between gods and mortals. After all, the power of the gods is strong, and the relationship between the two will definitely not be balanced. A long time ago, there was a god who fell in love with a mortal. The relationship between the two broke down, and the god destroyed the entire city to vent his anger. What a when mountains have no edges, when the heavens and earth unite. Since your love is so firm and enough for you to despise the heavenly court, then this immortal power, this longevity, must also be a burden to you. I raised my hand, and a faint light flowed from my fingertips, pointing to Ayao. "No," she exclaimed, and the immortal light around her dissipated instantly, like broken glass. The gorgeous immortal dress turned into starlight and disappeared. Her figure twisted and shrank in pain, and finally she lay prostrate on the cold ground, transformed into a snow-white, frightened and helpless white snake. The scholarly Lang's face froze as determination and deep affection, replaced by extreme fear. He looked at the white snake on the ground, which raised its head and seemed to want to get close to him, screamed, and suddenly retreated backward, almost tripping over, with no more affection in his eyes, only pure disgust and fear. "Demon! Monster!" His voice trembled, and the "when mountains have no edges, when the heavens and earth unite" just now seemed like a big joke. I looked at his unbearable appearance with cold eyes, without any waves in my heart. "Since your love is stronger than gold, then go to the mortal world and be a pair of ordinary lovers." I waved my sleeves, and a spatial crack appeared. "I allow you to stay together. Go." Before the scholar could say anything, a suction force came from the crack, instantly engulfing the frightened scholar and the bewildered white snake, sending them to the mortal world. The hall of celestial glory returned to solemnity, surrounded by immortal clouds, as if the farce just now had never happened. But I didn't stop there. I said to the gods in the hall, "Are you willing to watch their love story with me?" Then, without waiting for their response, my mind moved, and an ancient treasure mirror floated in the air, the mirror of heaven and earth, which can observe all phenomena of all living beings in the three realms. The light and shadows in the mirror flowed, quickly locking onto a water town in Jiangnan. One day in heaven is 1 year on earth. The scene in the mirror began to flow quickly. In the first few years, the scene was in line with that oath. Although the white snake lost its immortal power and could not transform into a human, it still had intelligence and accompanied the scholar. After the scholar recovered from his shock, seeing that the white snake was docile and well-behaved, and seemed to be quite intelligent, able to drive away mice and avoid insects, and thinking that it was once a fairy, he felt a strange feeling in his heart. So he kept it at home, and occasionally told it his thoughts, recalling a few sentences of Ayao. It seemed that there was a bit of meaning that humans and demons were different, but depended on each other. However, time in the mirror flew by. About 3 years later in the mortal world, 3 days in the heavens, the scholar's family became richer, and he also read some books, passed the examination for a scholar's title, and began to associate with some literati. He went to taverns and tea houses more often, and gradually lost interest in the white snake at home, which was of no use other than quiet companionship. After another year or two, he was already a regular visitor to brothels. He flirted and sang with the red-robed girls, drinking and writing poems, having a great time. Those gentle words and fragrant scents, vivid and fragrant, were far more attractive than a cold and silent snake. He had long forgotten Ayao, and even began to feel that the days he spent with the snake were unlucky. He hadn't looked at the corner where the white snake was coiled at home for a long time. Occasionally, he remembered to tell the servants to throw some raw meat over, so that it wouldn't starve to death. I watched all of this expressionlessly in front of the mirror. The thunder had already subsided, and the only thing in the hall was the faint light flowing from the treasure mirror and the increasingly indulgent laughter of the scholar in the lower realm. The so-called vows of eternal love were so vulnerable in the face of firewood, rice, oil, and salt, and in the face of realistic temptations, without even needing "when mountains have no edges, when the heavens and earth unite." Only a few years, a few scenes of prosperity, and he had already parted from her. The fairy's question was still echoing in my ears. Do you understand love? I may not understand her kind of moths to the flame, self-deceiving love. But she and that scholar obviously didn't understand what true love and responsibility are. Their love was as fragile as a joke. I put away the celestial mirror and then turned to the gods below the stage. Do you think this god-mortal love is really so beautiful? Seeing my sharp eyes, the gods below lowered their heads and dared not answer. Then I turned my attention to the old man under the moon. What do you think? Old man under the moon. Seeing my gaze, the old man under the moon immediately knelt on the ground. This humble minister thinks that this is not love, but a kind of desire. I sneered and raised my voice again. This time as a warning to you. If there are any more immortals who want to go to the mortal world and experience a love affair with a mortal, I might as well help them. After saying that, I waved my hand, and the gods disappeared before my eyes. I believe that those who violate the heavenly rules and fall in love will restrain themselves afterward. After dealing with these things, I slowly walked to my bedroom. In fact, I could do it with just a thought, but I enjoyed the process of walking. The bedroom was quiet, and clouds flowed slowly under the jade steps. I was about to rest for a while, to sort out the slight ripples brought by today's farce, when suddenly, an urgent and sharp ringing pierced the peace of the celestial realm. That was the alerting clock set up at the north and south heavenly gates, which would never be rung unless it was extremely urgent and related to the survival of the three realms. Report. A heavenly general almost rolled into the hall, his armor stained with dust, his expression extremely panicked, and he didn't even care about etiquette. Your Majesty, emergency military report. The demon army has suddenly attacked the human realm and has now broken through the defense lines of 3 continents, and hundreds of millions of living beings are suffering. I stood up suddenly, golden light bursting from my eyes. What did you say? There's an ancient barrier between the human and demon realms, which is indestructible. How can the demon army invade the mortal world on a large scale? The heavenly general prostrated on the ground, his voice trembling with disbelief, reporting to your Majesty. The barrier was not broken from the outside, but from the inside, it was forcibly opened. Right at the fallen god abyss where the southern border and the demon realm meet. An extremely ominous premonition instantly seized me. Fallen god abyss. That was the most important defense of the heavenly court, guarded all year round by. Who is guarding the fallen god abyss? My voice calmed down, but it carried the coldness that would freeze everything. The heavenly general lowered his head even further, almost daring not to speak. It's General Mo, she, the god of war. Summon the god of war. My order echoed like thunder throughout the entire heavenly palace. However, after a moment, the eunuch who went to deliver the order rolled back, his face pale. Your Majesty, the god of war's residence is empty. His guards are also missing, and there is only... What else is there? A wisp of extremely faint, demonic energy. In an instant, the scenes of dealing with the god-mortal couple in the Hall of Celestial Glory and the military report in front of me collided in my mind. The scholar's cowardly and retreating face, the fairy's foolish and selfless dedication, and the old man under the moon's sentence, this is not love, but desire. An anger of being completely fooled and betrayed, far deeper and more terrifying than the previous presumptuous, rose from my heart. I was still bothering with that petty affair of love, but the real termites had already gnawed at the foundation of the heavenly court. Good a love that is stronger than gold. Good a when mountains have no edges, when the heavens and earth unite. I laughed in anger and swung my sleeves. If the god of war is not here, is there no one else available? Pass down the order. Order the Deputy General Yi Hui, the 9 heavens demon-subduing marshal, to immediately gather his troops and rush to support the human world. At all costs, force the demon army back to the demon realm and close the gap in the barrier. This humble subject obeys the heavenly emperor's decree. The heavenly general took the order and turned into golden light and sped away. The bedroom returned to silence again, but the storm in my heart intensified. The god of war, my most trusted and important general, in charge of the heavenly court's military power, whose strength was second only to me. I raised my hand again, and the mirror of heaven and earth appeared. This time, the mirror no longer reflected the love affairs of men and women in Jiangnan, but quickly swept over the tragic situation of war and broken mountains and rivers in the human world, and finally fixed on the gap in the fallen god abyss barrier that had been forcibly torn open. The mirror light traced back, tracking the last breath of the god of war, Mo-Shi. The picture gradually became clear. That was a hidden valley near the barrier gap. I saw my heroic and extraordinary god of war, who had made great achievements in battle, was not wearing military uniform, but had changed into a simple green robe. And next to him, snuggled a woman wearing black gauze with a demonically beautiful face. The demon pattern between the woman's eyebrows indicated her noble demon identity, the daughter of the demon lord. They held hands tightly, and the exchange of glances was the same as the infatuation I had just seen in the hall. Then I heard their conversation, the words like knives scraping in my ears. Mo Lang, father is urging me. This barrier. The witch's voice was delicate, filled with entreaty. Rest assured, the god of war's voice was softer than I had ever heard. For you and me, for our future, what is this mere barrier? Once the two realms are connected, and His Majesty the Demon Lord allows us to rule the human realm, there will be no more gods or demons to keep us apart, and we can be together forever. But what about His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor? The Heavenly Emperor? The god of war scoffed, his tone tinged with disdain and resentment. He is high above, unchanging for eternity. How could he ever truly understand the weight of love? He only uses those cold, heavenly laws to bind all living beings. When I possess enough power, perhaps even his Lingxiao palace. There was no need to hear the rest. The truth was revealed. I don't believe this love can truly be so enchanting to them. I retracted the treasure mirror, the aura surrounding me almost freezing the entire palace. I thought that by being iron-fisted and ruthless after awakening, I could deter the petty and maintain the heavenly laws. But I never expected that the true danger wouldn't come from those insignificant challenges, but from the person I trusted most, stemming from the boundless greed and ambition disguised in the name of love. Love, I murmured to myself. The word that fairy questioned me with sounded so ironic now. Perhaps I don't understand her narrow kind of love, but they are even more unworthy of defiling the word love. My gaze pierced through the palace, looking down at the war-torn human realm and at the unfathomable demon domain. The war between gods and demons ended quickly. After all, there was already a huge difference in strength between gods and demons. Before the Lingxiao Palace, a murderous aura replaced the usual auspicious clouds. The execution terrace stood tall and imposing, the fluctuations of its laws causing all the immortals and gods to feel palpitations. The god of war, Mo-Shi, and the demon saintess, Li Ji, were tightly bound by immortal binding cords and escorted to the foot of the platform. His Yi-Wei battle armor was broken, his body covered in wounds, but he still stood tall, his gaze arrogant. Li Ji's black gauze dress was stained with dust, the demon one pattern/mark. On her forehead was dim, but the look in her eyes as she looked at the god of war next to her was still full of dependence and a kind of morbid fanaticism. Montak Lang, she whispered, her voice trembling, but not entirely out of fear, but more with a heroic sense of facing the whole world. Lier, don't be afraid. The god of war looked back at her. His tone was a forced calmness and tenderness. Our love is witnessed by heaven and earth. It can never be erased by a mere execution terrace. Heavenly Emperor, you are high above, cold and ruthless. You will never understand what true love is. I sat high on the throne, overlooking this pair of tragic lovers, no longer feeling any emotion, only cold determination. The gods in the palace held their breath and lowered their heads. The atmosphere was so heavy it felt like you could squeeze water from it. Love, my voice was calm, but clearly transmitted to every corner, suppressing the faint thunder of the execution terrace. The love you speak of is the reason for betraying your race, leading wolves into the house, and causing hundreds of millions of living beings to suffer. I raised my hand, pointing to the treasure mirror of heaven and earth. The image of the human world reappeared in the mirror. Cities turned to scorched earth, people displaced, bones scattered across the wilderness, demons rampant. Wailing sounds seemed to penetrate the mirror and reach the heavenly court directly. Look at the results of your love. This is what you've gained from disregarding your responsibilities and indulging your desires. Li Ji shrieked. That's for our future. It's to break this corrupt order. Why can't gods and demons coexist? Why should there be boundaries for love? The god of war also raised his head and roared. That's right. For true love, what does it matter if we overturn the world? Our love can transcend life and death, and naturally, it can transcend these worldly rules. Your Majesty, even if you beat us to ashes today, our love will live on. It will prove that you are wrong. Obdurate. I gently uttered 4 words, no longer engaging in pointless arguments with them. With different beliefs, words were superfluous. They were immersed in their own tragic drama woven with betrayal and sacrifice, and they could no longer see the truth. I slowly rose, stepped down from the imperial steps, and walked towards the execution terrace. With each step I took, the pressure around me increased, and the laws of heaven and earth resonated with it. Since you are so insistent that love can save everything and transcend everything, then I will see if your great love can save your lives under the light of the execution god, and whether it can offset the heinous crimes you have committed. I stood still in front of the execution terrace, my gaze as cold as eternal ice, sweeping over the two of them. Emoshi, as the god of war of the heavenly court, in charge of military power, enjoying the offerings of the 3 realms. Yet for the sake of your own selfish desires, you colluded with the demon race, opened the barrier without authorization, led troops to invade, causing suffering to all living beings. Your sin won. You abandoned your faith and defected from the heavenly court. Your sin too. And you have shown no remorse to this day, attempting to whitewash your crimes in the name of love. Your sin 3. All 3 sins combined. You shall be subjected to 81 rays of execution godlight, your body and soul obliterated. Li Ji, demon saintess, bewitched the god of war, destroying the peace between the 2 realms. Your crime is the same as the principal culprit. Execute together. My judgment was like a final sentence, sealing their fate. No, you can't. The god of war struggled, the immortal binding cord deeply embedded in his divine body, bursting out golden light. Our love is real. What right do you have to deny it? You heartless, cold god. Li Ji also cried out, Mo Lang, we're not wrong. We're not wrong to love each other. The heavenly laws are wrong. This world is wrong. I ignored their roars and activated the supreme laws of the execution terrace. In an instant, the entire execution terrace burst out with a dazzling but destructive light. Countless ancient runes lit up, converging into an incomparably thick pillar of light containing absolute annihilation power, descending with a bang. The first ray of divine light fell, accurately striking the god of war. He let out a shrill scream. His powerful divine body instantly cracked, and his divine soul was as painful as if it were torn apart. His power, which was enough to withstand the demon lord, was vulnerable in the face of the laws of the execution terrace. Montaklang! Li Ji screamed, wanting to pounce over, but was held back by the immortal binding cord. The second, the third. The rays of divine light fell one after another, without mercy. The light on the god of war's body rapidly dimmed. Divine blood splattered, but evaporated in the divine light. The arrogance and madness on his face were finally replaced by boundless pain and fear. He looked at Li Ji beside him. The look in his eyes was no longer pure love, but a strong desire to survive, and even a trace of resentment. If it weren't for her, how could he be in this situation? Leah. His voice was twisted in pain. The 10th, the 20th. However, just as the god of war and Li Ji were about to have their souls destroyed, a heavenly thunder fell from the 9th heaven, directly hitting the execution terrace. and the execution terrace, which could kill gods, was actually reduced to ashes under this heavenly thunder, revealing two figures curled up on the ground in unbearable pain. Almost at this moment, the two people disappeared under my very eyes, and I didn't even detect the aura of anyone else. I felt a trace of heavenly Tao power in that heavenly thunder. I looked up at the ninth heaven, the heavenly Tao. The Tao rhymes flowed under my feet, and powerful spiritual power wildly emanated from my body. The surrounding gods were all forced to kneel on the ground. But even so, I still couldn't find the whereabouts of the two people. But even so, I didn't withdraw my magic power, but increased the output of my power. My purpose was no longer to find the whereabouts of the two people, but to look up at the sky. Heavenly Tao, what do you want to do? But this time I couldn't even communicate with the heavenly Tao, which was something that hadn't happened in tens of thousands of years. Even if I hadn't communicated with the heavenly Tao for nearly 100 years, there shouldn't be any reason why I couldn't connect to the heavenly Tao, unless he himself didn't want to communicate with me. Thinking of this, my eyes gradually became cold. No matter what you want to do. Since you are determined to protect this disciple who violates the heavenly laws, then don't blame me for showing no mercy. I waved my sleeve and asked people to search for the whereabouts of the missing god of war, and then left the execution terrace. As soon as I returned to my palace, the murderous aura that permeated my body had not completely subsided, and even the clouds in the palace were frozen. A female voice containing anger and disbelief pierced through the silence. Xiao Hao, what have you done? I looked up. It was my empress, Xiao. Her face was frosty at the moment, and her phoenix eyes, which were usually bright and radiant, were burning with raging anger, staring straight at me. And behind her stood the white snake that should have been in the lower realm, spending a lifetime with the scholar Yao. She had actually recovered her immortal body. Although her face was pale and her aura was unstable, she had indeed transformed back into human form. Hiding behind the empress, her eyes filled with the fear of surviving a catastrophe, and a hint of provocation towards me. It was utterly absurd. A criminal immortal who violated the heavenly laws and was sent down to the mortal realm not only returned to the heavenly court without permission, but also dared to appear in front of me. Even with such an expression, the Empress Xiao was obviously extremely angry. She continued to scold without waiting for me to respond. A Yao is my most capable female official, and also a younger sister I have watched grow up since I was a child. You didn't tell me, without asking right from wrong. You turned her back into her original form and demoted her to the mortal world to be with that filthy scholar? Xiao Hao, do you even have me in your eyes? Have you ever cared about my feelings at all? I looked at her, the fire of violence that arose because of the heavenly Tao's interference and the disappearance of the god of war rose again in my heart. She actually came to question me for a criminal immortal. Especially now that the demon realm had just retreated and there may still be traitors within the heavenly court? Do I need to ask anyone for permission to deal with a criminal immortal who violated the heavenly laws and had an affair with the mortal world? My voice was cold and hard as iron, without a trace of emotion. Empress, are you questioning my judgment? Or do you think that the heavenly laws and laws can be lenient in the face of your personal feelings? Heavenly laws? Laws. Xiao seemed to have heard a great joke. She took a step forward, her beautiful face full of disappointment and sarcasm. Xiao Hao, you keep talking about heavenly laws, but what about yourself? You are cold, dictatorial, and your heart is only filled with your authority and order. Do you understand what is love? What is trust and respect? She became more and more excited, waving her arm and pointing to a Yao behind her. Look at her. She's just pursuing a true love. What's wrong with that? That scholar treated her very well at first. It's you. It was your cold test, your aloof manipulation, that made that mortal reveal his true colors. You personally destroyed a good match. I looked at her as if I were seeing this person for the first time. The former her, although sometimes willful, was reasonable, understood the big picture, and had never made a mistake in managing the affairs of the heavenly palace. Now she can actually say such words that are indistinguishable from right and wrong, and reverse black and white. The white snake and the scholar are a good match. The god of war and the demon woman's love that subverted the three realms is also a good match. Obdurate. I spat out these four words again, both to her and to the white snake. It seems that my punishment was still too light, actually making you think that you can challenge the heavenly might again and again. Xiao looked at the undisguised, murderous intent in my eyes. She took a deep breath, as if she had made some kind of determination. With a flick of her wrist, a golden, shining scroll containing the power of a great Tao oath appeared in her hand. That was the marriage certificate that we established under the witness of heaven and earth when we got married. Not a mortal marriage certificate, but a great Tao contract concerning shared luck and intertwined cultivation. Since you are so ruthless, not thinking of our love as husband and wife at all, and not leaving me any room, Xiao's voice was trembling but firm, with a sense of breaking the boat. Xiaohao, I don't bother wanting this empress position anymore. Today, I will divorce you. A yowl, the white snake behind her, burst out with an astonishing light in her eyes the moment she heard these words, and the meaning of provocation was almost overflowing. Xiao held up the reason book and said loudly, according to the ancient marriage contract, for husband and wife to divorce, the at-fault party must compensate the faultless party. You are cold and tyrannical, severely punishing my close attendant for no reason, hurting my face, which is your fault. Today, I want half of your cultivation as compensation. This is a contract witnessed by the heavenly Tao, and you cannot go back on your word. The moment her voice fell, the divorce agreement burst out with a dazzling light. The great Tao runes flowed, and a powerful contractual force instantly enveloped me and her. I felt a huge and irresistible suction force began to act on my primordial spirit and Dantian purple mansion. I cultivated arduously for tens of thousands of years. The Hunyuan Wuji heavenly emperor cultivation that controlled the three realms was actually starting to loosen, turning into the purest source power, uncontrollably leaving my body and surging toward Xiao's. Although the speed wasn't extremely fast, it was definitely flowing away. This scene completely crossed my bottom line and touched my reverse scale. Cultivation is my foundation, the cornerstone for maintaining order in the three realms and suppressing all turmoil. She, or rather, whatever was behind her, dared to plot this. Audacious. This angry roar was far more terrifying than the one in the Hall of Miraculous Clouds. The entire Heavenly Emperor's palace, no, the entire 9 heavens trembled violently, and 10,000 laws simultaneously let out pained wails, as if unable to bear the burden. I instantly understood. It was the heavenly Tao again. Only the power of the heavenly Tao could so forcefully activate this ancient marriage contract and strip away my cultivation when I was completely unprepared. Shi, was she being used? Or was she originally? But at this moment, I didn't have time to think deeply. A monstrous rage burned away the last trace of my sanity. Betrayal. Endless betrayal. The trusted god of war betrayed me. And now my wedded wife wanted to steal my cultivation. You want to share the John-esque cultivation? My voice was as cold as a 10,000-year-old frozen abyss, and there was no longer a trace of past affection in my eyes, only pure, all-destroying, killing intent. Just you? You think you're worthy? Just as Xiao's face turned pale under the pressure of my killing intent, and she tried to urge the separation contract to absorb power faster. I moved. Without using any supernatural powers or spells, I simply raised my hand, formed a sword with my fingers, and lightly slashed towards her and the white snake Yao. Words became law. Thoughts gave birth to punishment. The heavenly emperor's fury, 1,000,000 corpses laid to rest, was not an exaggeration. An invisible but absolute power, sufficient to sever karma and annihilate true spirits, swept through space. The angry, resolute, yet slightly greedy expression on Shi Yao's face instantly froze. The golden light of the separation contract in her hand suddenly dimmed and shattered, turning into specks of light and dissipating. She widened her eyes, looking at me in disbelief, as if wanting to say something, but her body, her nascent soul, all traces of her existence had already begun to collapse and dissipate from the most basic particle level. The provocation of the white snake Yao behind her completely turned into extreme fear, and she couldn't even let out a scream before following in her footsteps. In just a single instant, two female immortals, the respected Empress and the newly recovered sinful immortal, completely disappear between heaven and earth, body and soul destroyed, without even the possibility of reincarnation. The suction force that forcefully stripped away my cultivation came to an abrupt halt. The palace was deathly silent, with only the terrifying pressure and killing intent around me that had not yet subsided, roaring silently. I stood in place, my face cold, feeling the slight loss of cultivation in my body and the silent but ubiquitous, suffocating intervention and malice of the heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao. I slowly raised my head, my gaze as if penetrating the hall of miraculous clouds, penetrating the 33 heavens, directly gazing at the supreme rules in the dark. What exactly do you want to do? This time, I still received no response. After that, in order to prevent the gods from neglecting their duties again due to love or other things, I ordered an assessment of the merits of the gods. If they did not meet the standards, they would risk being replaced by mortal cultivators. I sent a god to communicate this matter to the human emperor, who was called Xiao Yan. He was very happy with my instructions, and he assured me that human cultivators would work hard to cultivate so as to ascend as soon as possible. It seems that they were also very angry at the gods' previous dereliction of duty. In this way, the ascension path, which had been abandoned for hundreds of years, was reopened by me. The unchanging days of the divine realm no longer existed. The next morning, a thick stack of resignation letters was placed on my desk. This was their threat to me, wanting to use their resignation letters to threaten me to withdraw my order. I sneered, since you all want to resign and return to the mortal world to fall in love, then how can you not grant your wish? With a wave of my hand, I approved all the gods' resignation letters and quickly pressed them to the entrance of the mortal realm, stripping them all of their immortal bones and demoting them to the mortal world. The gods saw that I seemed to be serious and quickly knelt and begged for mercy, begging me to let them go. But I wouldn't listen to their pleas, and without any hesitation, I demoted all the gods to the mortal realm. After this series of actions, the divine realm became much cleaner and purer. During the following period, I also selected many mortal cultivators with high cultivation and stable states of mind to take up divine positions in the divine realm. Among them, the one I admired the most was Li Ming, the #1 cultivator in the human realm. His strength had already surpassed most of the gods in the divine realm, so I appointed him to the position of god of war, and I had him lead 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals to conquer the demon realm. Because recently, the demon realm seemed to be stirring again. At the edge of the demon realm, evil energy soared to the sky. The newly promoted god of war, Li Ming, led the heavenly army in a fierce battle against the main force of the demon race. However, the demon army seemed to have been prepared for a long time. Their formations were treacherous, and their offensive was like a tide. Moreover, they were quite familiar with all the tactical abilities of the divine realm and carried out targeted strikes. The battle was extremely fierce. Although the heavenly army was brave, they seemed to be stuck in a quagmire and were retreating steadily. Finally, amidst the chaotic explosion of demonic energy and the tearing of spatial rifts, a sorrowful dragon roar resounded throughout the battlefield. Li Ming, along with his mount, the Azure Dragon, was knocked into the spatial turbulence by several demon lords and traitorous gods working together, disappearing without a trace. The defeat was reported back to the heavenly court, and the court was shaken. In the hall of miraculous clouds, My face was ashen as I listened to the tearful report of the heavenly general. Your Majesty, God of War Li Ming, he fought bravely and unyieldingly, but was finally ambushed by traitorous gods and fell into spatial turbulence. His life or death unknown. Our army was defeated. The newly appointed gods in the hall looked alarmed, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. I slammed my fist on the armrest of the throne, causing the entire hall of miraculous clouds to tremble. Worthless. A bunch of worthless things. My angry voice was like thunder. How dare these petty demons deceive my heavenly court like this? In a fit of rage, I stood up abruptly, killing intent sweeping in all directions. Convey an decree. Gather all the troops that can be mobilized in the heavenly court, temporarily led by the Deputy General of the Imperial Guard, and immediately march to the demon realm. Jun will personally lead the expedition to level the demon realm and grind all rebels and demons into powder. With the decree issued, the entire war machine of the heavenly court went into frantic operation. A large number of elite heavenly soldiers and generals, led by the Deputy General of the Imperial Guard, marched out of the southern heavenly gate in a mighty manner, heading to the demon realm to seek revenge. The defense of the heavenly court inevitably became empty. Just as the army left, an unexpected change occurred outside the southern heavenly gate. A demonic light that tore through the sky suddenly bombarded the guardian barrier, and the barrier, which had already been weakened by internal respondents, fluctuated violently and instantly broke open a large hole. Then, a black mass of demon troops poured in like a tide, and the leader was none other than the former god of war, Mo Shi, wearing demonic armor, holding a blood-stained divine halberd, his aura even stronger than before, but his eyes filled with resentment and madness. Beside him was the demoness Li Ji, and a group of old gods who were also shrouded in demonic energy and had hideous faces. Kill. Level the hall of miraculous clouds. Take back everything that belongs to us. Mo Shi's roar resounded throughout the 9 heavens. Let that ruthless and cold-blooded tyrant see what it means to be universally betrayed. The heavenly soldiers and generals who remained behind fought bravely, but in the face of a well-planned, coordinated internal and external strong offensive, and Mo Shi's terrifying strength as a former god of war, the defense line was quickly torn apart. The rebel army and the demon army advanced victoriously, bloodily washing away everything in their path, directly approaching the core of the heavenly court, the Hall of Miraculous Clouds. The door of the hall was violently smashed open. Mo Shi took the lead, stepping into the hall that symbolized the pinnacle of power in the 3 realms. He looked at me, who was high on the throne, seemingly alone because the army had been sent out, and a twisted and joyful smile appeared on his face. Xiao Hao. He pointed his sword at me, his voice filled with the pleasure of avenging a great hatred. Your death is here. Do you see? This is the consequence of your stubbornness. You're going against the grain. You are universally betrayed, and even your most trusted new god of war has no bones left. Now, who can save you? The demoness Li Ji, the rebel gods, and the rushing demon generals behind him let out wild roars, and the demonic energy and resentment almost drowned the entire hall of miraculous clouds. I slowly stood up from the throne, my gaze calmly sweeping over the faces below, some resentful, some triumphant, some hideous, and finally landed on Mo Shi. Montak Elf. My voice was devoid of emotion. You seem to have forgotten that Tun can sit on this throne of the heavenly emperor, relying on nothing other than my own strength. Mo Shi scoffed. You're just bluffing when you're about to die? Attack. Capture him. However, just as the demon army and the rebel gods were about to swarm forward, I gently raised my hand. In the next moment, an unexpected change occurred. The walls and dome around the Hall of Miraculous Clouds suddenly lit up with countless powerful sealing runes. The entire hall instantly transformed into an indestructible cage. At the same time, Deafening shouts of killing and majestic and pure divine power fluctuations came from outside the hall. "What's going on?" Emoshi's expression changed drastically, only to see on the originally empty square outside the hall countless golden, fully armored, and well-organized heavenly soldiers and generals appeared out of thin air like soldiers descending from heaven. The leader was precisely the deputy general of the Imperial Guard who was supposed to be leading the army in the demon realm. And who was standing beside him, if not Li Ming? I never believed that those old gods would be willing to be abolished just like that. And I had thought of the old gods betraying the heavenly court and joining the demon race as soon as the news of the demon realm battlefield was reported back. And their purpose was the heavenly court, which meant me. So I used a trick, allowing Li Ming to feign defeat, but in fact he hid and secretly returned to the heavenly court. And the heavenly soldiers who were to send out were all just a smokescreen, especially waiting for those Protoss traitors to attack the Hall of Miraculous Clouds, catching them all in one fell swoop. "Li Ming, you're not dead, Mo," she exclaimed in disbelief, his eyes filled with disbelief. Li Ming's cold gaze swept across the rebel army like a sharp sword. "Thanks to His Majesty's grace, setting up this trap to lure you into the urn, how dare this general die easily?" The deputy general of the Imperial Guard waved the command flag in his hand and roared, "Form a formation! Strangle the rebel demons!" In an instant, the prearranged heavenly net array was activated with a roar. Countless golden chains and destructive light pillars descended from the sky, accurately striking into the demon army and the rebel god ranks. At the same time, the elite heavenly soldiers on the periphery, like a steel torrent, launched a merciless charge. "Trap! It's a trap!" Li Ji screamed, her face pale with fear. The demon army and the rebels instantly fell into utter chaos. They thought their sneak attack was successful and victory was assured, but they never expected to plunge headfirst into a slaughterhouse prepared just for them. The heavenly soldiers, rested and bolstered by the array, possessed battle power far beyond their expectations. Emoshi's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at me. "You knew all along. Even Li Ming's defeat was just a play you acted out." I sat high on my throne, looking down at the chaos and slaughter below, my gaze still cold. "I gave you a chance." My voice was like ice, proclaiming the final judgment. "Since you chose betrayal, chose to consort with demons, chose to court death, then today, this Lingshao Palace will be your burial ground." "No." Mo, she let out an unwilling roar, his demonic energy erupting, attempting a desperate struggle, rushing straight towards me. However, I didn't need to lift a finger. The moment he moved, Li Ming and Vice General Yi Hui intercepted him, one on his left and one on his right. Two majestic divine powers blasted out, colliding heavily with Mo, Shi's demonic halberd. Boom! A terrifying energy shockwave swept out, but was entirely absorbed by the Lingshao Palace's array. The great battle completely erupted inside and outside the Lingshao Palace. But this time, offense and defense had switched, and the roles of hunter and prey were reversed. There was no way Mo, Shi, and his group could be a match for Li Ming and the other guy. Soon they were knocked to the ground, unable to stand up again. And the rest of the rebels were all killed by the heavenly soldiers. Only Mo, Shi, and Li Ji were left. They were both captured and stare at me hatefully. "Your Majesty, should we execute them?" I pondered for a moment, wanting to prevent the heavenly Tao from interfering again. I waved my hand at them. "I'll do it myself." I didn't believe that the heavenly Tao could save the two from my hands. I summoned my long sword and slashed at the two of them. At the same time, I was on guard against a sneak attack from the heavenly Tao. But this time, the heavenly Tao didn't seem to send down heavenly lightning. Instead, the two of them burst into golden light, and my sword actually missed. I frowned deeply, knowing that this was the heavenly Tao's doing again. Seeing that I couldn't hit him, Mo, she laughed madly. "Ha ha ha, Xiao Hao, is that all you've got? You think you can kill me? Keep dreaming." I looked angry, pulled out my sword, and flew straight up into the sky. I didn't want to endure any longer. Today, I would cut down the heavens. Standing above the 9 heavens, I pointed my sword at the heavenly Tao that manipulated everything in the darkness. The anger in my chest had burned away the last trace of hesitation. The strange golden light on Mo, Shi, and Li Ji, the law that could resist even the power of the heavenly emperor, completely confirmed my guess. A hand was pulling the strings behind the scenes, trampling on the rules. Hide your head and show your tail. Get out here for me. I roared, and the cultivation base of the Hongming heavenly emperor burst forth without reservation. No longer targeting a specific enemy, but forcibly impacting and tearing apart the void barriers of this world with my own supreme Tao fruit, directly breaking into the origin of that law. Space shattered like glass, revealing a bizarre, law-lined, and turbulent strange realm behind it. There was no up, down, left, or right, no concept of time and space, only endless light bands representing rules flowing and colliding. And at the core of those billions of light bands, I saw a blurred light and shadow that was the incarnation of the heavenly Tao of this world. However, unlike the majestic, vast, and impartial heavenly Tao in my knowledge, the light and shadow in front of me appeared, unusually dim, even somewhat incomplete, as if being eroded and suppressed by something. I stepped into this lost space, and the pressure was directed towards the light and shadow. Tell me, who exactly is it? Who is manipulating all of this behind the scenes? The dim heavenly Tao light and shadow fluctuated slightly, conveying a tired and anxious intention, not a sound, but directly resounding in the depths of my soul. Xiaohao, you have finally broken free. Broken free. My eyes narrowed. Yes, 100 years ago, an extremely powerful but twisted law force descended out of thin air. It replaced me and became the new foundation of this world. The heavenly Tao's intentions were intermittent and full of powerlessness. It fanatically promoted a certain extreme, transcendent emotion, regarding it as the supreme criterion. Although I am still the heavenly Tao, I am almost suppressed and assimilated by it. Even you, heavenly emperor, have been invisibly affected, becoming unusually tolerant of many transgressions. I suddenly remembered the inexplicable weariness and indifference in my heart when faced with many violations of the heavenly rules in the past century. It wasn't my own intention. Where did it originate? My voice was cold, and my killing intent locked onto the depths of the void. The heavenly Tao light and shadow laboriously gathered a trace of power and pointed to an unusually thick, splendid, yet ominous red light band among the countless law light bands. That's it. Although I am suppressed, I have also tried my best to sense its origin. It was not born naturally, but it comes from an incomprehensible world, a realm that seems to be constructed by some kind of intention. The red light band was extremely dazzling in my eyes, and the law aura contained in it was the same source as the force of interference I felt when dealing with a mortal love, killing the Empress, and facing the betrayal of the god of war. Is it possible to reach that world? I asked decisively. My remaining power, or perhaps the combination of your heavenly emperor status, could barely tear open a passage. But it is extremely dangerous. The main body of that law is far beyond you and me. The heavenly Tao warned. No need to say more. Open the passage. I didn't hesitate. The heavenly Tao light and shadow no longer spoke, gathered the last of their strength, and violently collided with the red light band with my heavenly emperor origin. A distorted, bizarre passage suddenly appeared, and a completely different law aura came from the opposite side, strange and fragile. Without hesitation, I stepped in, time and space reversed, and the bizarre scene rapidly retreated. When I regained my footing, I found myself standing in a narrow room filled with strange glowing blocks. A weak but unfamiliar energy fluctuation permeated the air, and in front of me, a young woman in strange clothes was sitting in front of a glowing slab-like object, her fingers tapping rapidly, her face with a near-fanatical concentration and satisfaction. Her aura was as weak as an ant, but what made my pupils shrink was the intention fluctuation emanating from her body was the same origin as the twisted red law and the absurd farce I had experienced. On that glowing slab-like object, sentences were clearly displayed, describing my world. It was Lingxiao Palace. It was Mo Shi and Li Ji. The words were full of eulogy for so-called great love, while disparaging my iron-blooded methods as conservative and cold-blooded tyrant. My billions of years of rule, the order of the three realms, the destiny of all living beings was just a story arbitrarily woven by this fragile creature. All the betrayals and struggles I had experienced were just to satisfy her so-called aesthetics. It's you. The woman was startled by the sudden appearance of the voice and my existence. She screamed and jumped up from her chair, looking at me in horror. Who are you? How did you get in? But soon, she seemed to guess something from my unusual clothes and indescribable majesty. The horror in her eyes faded, replaced by a kind of extreme excitement, even with a scrutinizing light. Wait, you are Heavenly Emperor Xiao Hao. God, my setting has come true? No. Is it cosplay? How is it possible? Looking at the excitement and curiosity in her eyes that regarded herself as the creator, the anger in my heart soared to the sky, but instead became extremely calm. I spoke slowly. Immediately, modify everything you have written. Erase those absurd love endings and return them to the right track. The woman was stunned. Then her face showed a displeased and stubborn expression as if she had been offended. Modify it? Why? I am the author. The love of Mo Shi and Li Ji is great. It is an existence that transcends everything. An old fogey like you who doesn't understand love and only knows the rules, you don't understand the impact of art at all. Tragedy is the eternal aesthetic. They rebelled against you for love, and even destroying the world is poignant. This is my story. She actually had the audacity to justify herself. She actually thought that the betrayal that led to the devastation of billions of lives was aesthetics. Looking at her expression that was taken for granted and immersed in her own fantasy, the last trace of my patience was exhausted. Aesthetics. I slowly raised my hand, and the terrifying pressure of the Hongmeng Heavenly Emperor began to permeate this small room, and the space was twisting and shaking. I will let you see what kind of suffering your so-called aesthetics are built on. Without waiting for her to rebut, my powerful divine sense had locked onto her. At the same time, I activated the last of the heavenly Tao power in my body, the coordinate power that the heavenly Tao's remnant shadow granted me when I came, which could temporarily connect the timings of the two worlds. Light burst forth. The next moment, she and I had disappeared from the narrow room. The woman found herself standing in the clouds. Below was the war-torn human world. Demonic energy raged. Cities turned into scorched earth, and people fled crying, but were ruthlessly torn apart and devoured by demons. Parents desperately protected their children before they died, and finally turned into withered bones together. The miserable situation was like hell. This is... The woman's face turned pale, and her stomach churned. This is the 9th day after the god of war, Mo Shi opened the demonic realm's barrier for your so-called love. My voice sounded coldly in her ears. Look carefully. This is the foundation of your great love. The scene changed again. It was the broken heavenly court, where weak immortal officials left behind were ruthlessly beheaded by rebel gods, and blood stained the jade steps. It was the heavenly soldiers and generals guarding the frontiers, who died without knowing the truth, bursting out the last divine light in the demonic tide, and their souls scattered. It was the white snake, a Yao, protected by the Empress Shi, but eventually destroyed along with her, with the remaining shock and bewilderment in her eyes. Scene after scene, one thing after another, cruel and real, impacting the woman's senses. She began to tremble, her lips lost their color, and her previous excitement was crushed by the blood and despair in front of her. No. How could it be? I only wrote about them falling in love, about rebellion. I didn't want to write these things. You didn't write it, but they happened. My voice was like a heavy hammer, hitting her soul. Because of the shallow love above all in your writing, because it can trample on all responsibilities, rules, and lives. What you praise is the soil that nourishes all these tragedies. I grabbed her shoulders and forced her to look at the most cruel scene. A mortal mother, using her body to block the demonic energy, while the baby in her arms cried and died from the erosion of the demonic energy. Look at it. This is the tragic aesthetic you seek. Now, tell me, where is the beauty in it? He remained stubborn, even amidst immense discomfort, gritting his teeth and saying, So what? These people sacrificing themselves for Imo, Sheely, and Liji's love, it's their honor. I shook my head. Since you remain so incorrigible, then I will let you experience things firsthand. With a wave of my hand, we appeared in a dilapidated thatched hut. She was immediately shocked, as if realizing something, and quickly covered her chest. What do you want to do? I chuckled. I have no interest in you, but the demon soldiers might. Hearing this, her face visibly panicked. No, you can't do this. I am your creator. Without me, none of you would exist. Listening to her absurd statement, my face turned cold. What are you? I existed tens of thousands of years ago, and our world has existed for countless millennia. You are nothing but a cuckoo in the nest. How dare you call yourself a creator? Her angry voice attracted the demon soldiers, but they couldn't see me, only her struggling in the thatched hut. Seeing her, the demon soldiers excitedly pounced on her, tearing at her clothes and flesh. She writhed on the ground in agony. I'll change it. I'll change the ending right away. Let me go, please. I ignored her, letting the demon soldiers tear her apart. Soon, her breath grew weaker and weaker, until finally, she was no more. After that woman was tortured to death here, she would return to her original world. I thought, now she should be willing to change the ending, right? As expected, I received a message from the heavenly Tao. The new laws had disappeared, and she had regained her authority. With a thought, I returned to the divine realm. This time, there was no resistance, and I successfully executed Mo, She, and Liji. After that, because of the examination system I established, all the gods in the divine realm worked diligently in their positions, and no one deserted their post again because of love or other reasons. As for the demon race, I showed no mercy either, and had Li Ming personally lead the army to conquer them. From then on, the demon race ceased to exist.